It's 1932. 1 in 4 Americans can't find work. Families are living in cardboard shantytowns. Farmers are burning corn for heat because it's worth less than coal. While the masses struggled, a select few became millionaires during the worst economic disaster in modern history. Most depression content gives you breadlines and Dust Bowl photographs. This is the story of who actually won during the collapse, how economic contagion spread from Manhattan to Munich to Tokyo faster than anyone thought possible, and how the people history forgot, women, black communities, migrants, built the recovery that textbooks give politicians credit for. But it starts with a bank collapse most people have never heard of. Not in New York, in Vienna. October 29th, 1929, Black Tuesday. Wall Street crashes. You know this part. Here's what your history class skipped. The real global catastrophe didn't start in New York. It started on May 11th, 1931, in Vienna, when Creditanstalt, the largest bank in Central Europe, collapsed overnight. American banks had lent heavily to European institutions after World War I. When Wall Street recalled those loans, it created a financial domino effect that made the 1929 crash look like a warm-up act. Within weeks, Germany's banking system froze. Unemployment hit 30%. The Weimar Republic was already fragile from post-war reparations, but the Depression delivered the fatal blow. A failed Austrian painter named Adolf Hitler, who'd gotten 2.6% of the vote in 1928, suddenly became appealing to millions of desperate people. By 1933, he was chancellor. The Depression didn't just enable fascism, it practically wrote the invitation. But Germany wasn't alone. In Japan, the silk industry depended entirely on American demand. When American women stopped buying silk stockings and switched to cheaper rayon, Japanese silk exports dropped 50% in 2 years. Rural Japan descended into starvation. The military blamed weak civilian politicians. Young officers assassinated the prime minister in 1932. Japan's aggressive expansion into Manchuria wasn't just imperial ambition, it was economic desperation weaponized. Meanwhile, Latin America had built entire economies around exporting coffee, copper, and beef to industrialized nations. When commodity prices cratered, Chilean nitrate mining towns became ghost towns overnight. Brazilian coffee farmers burned their crops because shipping them cost more than they'd earn. Military coups swept the continent. Argentina, Brazil, Chile all saw authoritarian takeovers between 1930 and 1933. Democracy became a luxury these nations couldn't afford. We think of globalization as a modern phenomenon. Internet, container ships, supply chains. But the Depression proved the world was already dangerously interconnected in 1929. A stock crash in Manhattan could trigger fascism in Munich, militarism in Tokyo, and revolutions in Rio. The Depression wasn't just an American tragedy. It was the first truly global economic catastrophe. And it set the stage for a war that would kill 70 million people. But while nations crumbled, some individuals looked at the wreckage and saw something else entirely. Floyd Odlum was a lawyer who watched the 1929 crash and thought, "This is my moment." While everyone panic sold, Odlum borrowed money to buy distressed stocks and companies at pennies on the dollar. His investment firm, Atlas Corporation, grew from $40,000 in 1929 to controlling assets worth over $100 million by 1936. His strategy was simple: buy when there's blood in the streets, acquire controlling stakes in failing companies, restructure them, resell when the economy recovered. Modern vulture capitalists and distressed asset funds are still running Odlum's playbook nearly a century later. Then there's Charles Darrow, an unemployed heating salesman from Pennsylvania who invented a board game in 1933. You know it as Monopoly. The irony is almost too perfect. While real Americans were losing their homes, Darrow created a game where you buy property and bankrupt your friends. Parker Brothers initially rejected it. Darrow sold handmade versions himself, and they flew off shelves. For 25 cents, families could pretend to be real estate tycoons for a few hours. By 1935, Parker Brothers was producing 20,000 sets a week. Darrow became the first game designer millionaire. Entertainment isn't a luxury during hard times. It's a necessity, and the people who understand that get rich. Which explains Hollywood. The 1930s are called the golden age of cinema, and that's not coincidental. Movie tickets cost 10 to 25 cents. Weekly cinema attendance hit 80 million in a country of 123 million. 2/3 of the nation went to the movies every week. Studios became vertically integrated empires controlling production, distribution, and theaters. The Moguls, many Jewish immigrants who'd faced discrimination in other industries, built the most powerful cultural export machine in history. When you watch a Marvel movie in a multiplex today, you're experiencing a business model perfected during the Depression. And then there's the corporate contrarian play that should be taught in every MBA program. During the Depression, most companies slashed advertising to save money. Kellogg's and Procter & Gamble did the opposite. Kellogg's introduced Rice Krispies in 1928 and pushed it hard through the Depression with radio ads and character mascots. Result? Profits grew 30% while competitors struggled. P&G launched radio soap operas. Yes, that's where the term comes from, to sell Oxidol detergent. When everyone zigs, consider zagging. Market share is easier to grab when competitors retreat. That lesson has been proven in every recession since. The profiteers weren't smarter than everyone else. They had capital and saw possibilities where others saw only loss. That distinction matters because it reveals who the system rewards during collapse, not the hardest workers, but the people positioned to buy what others are forced to sell. Now, the profiteers got the money, but the people who actually held the country together during the Depression rarely appear in the history books, and what they built matters more than any fortune. The real architects of Depression-era survival weren't politicians or millionaires. They were the people usually left out of the story, and what they created echoes further than any New Deal program. Women became the economic engineers of household survival. The Make, Do, and Mend movement wasn't about patching clothes. It was a complete reimagining of household economics. Women turned flour sacks into dresses. Mills caught on and started printing patterns on the sacks for exactly this reason, which tells you everything about who was actually driving consumer innovation during the Depression. Women stretched meals with creative recipes that became regional traditions. They bartered skills and goods in informal economies invisible to official statistics. They ran the shadow economy that kept millions of families fed while the formal economy collapsed around them. And here's what the textbooks consistently miss. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers during the Depression and didn't leave when the economy recovered. The crisis normalized working women in ways that World War II later accelerated. Rosie the Riveter didn't emerge from nowhere. She had a Depression-era mother who'd already proven women could do the work the economy said they couldn't. Black communities, facing a depression inside a depression since discrimination meant they were last hired and first fired, built parallel economic systems. The Double Duty Dollar campaign was conscious spending to support Black-owned businesses. It wasn't just economics. It was survival strategy and civil rights organizing combined. When the formal economy excludes you, you build your own. That principle produced credit unions, mutual aid societies, and organizing infrastructure that would fuel everything that came later. A. Philip Randolph organized the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters during the Depression's depths, the first major Black labor union. The organizing skills, the networks, the institutional knowledge built during those years became the backbone of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. The March on Washington didn't materialize from thin air. It was built on 30 years of organizing that started when Black communities decided the system wouldn't save them and they'd have to save themselves. And the migrants? The Dust Bowl forced 2.5 million people to move, the largest internal migration in U.S. history. These weren't just victims, they were mobile labor that allowed California to become an agricultural powerhouse. They arrived to brutal conditions, wage theft, and discrimination. But they also brought skills, resilience, and a willingness to do work that kept American agriculture alive when the land itself was failing. The hobos riding freight trains developed something remarkable. Sophisticated communication networks using symbols chalked on fences and buildings. Which houses would give food? Which had mean dogs? Which towns had work? It was crowdsourced survival data before the internet existed. A decentralized information network built by the people with the least, solving problems the government couldn't or wouldn't. The Depression taught marginalized groups a lesson that reverberates today. If the system won't save you, build your own. That ethos shaped community organizing, credit unions, mutual aid, and grassroots movements for generations. But the story doesn't end with survival, because the Depression didn't just destroy, it rewired the future. The Depression didn't just destroy, it built. often by accident, and not in the ways we usually think. Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal gets all the credit for recovery. But here's the global picture nobody mentions. The Depression forced nearly every industrialized nation to fundamentally rethink the relationship between government and economy. Sweden created modern social democracy. Britain expanded its welfare system. Even conservative governments admitted unregulated capitalism had failed catastrophically. Social security, unemployment insurance, bank deposit insurance, labor rights. These weren't ideological victories. They were desperate attempts to prevent revolution. Policymakers looked at Europe's fascist takeovers and thought, that could be us. The modern welfare state emerged not from progressive vision, but from conservative fear. And here's what makes that matter. These temporary emergency measures became permanent. The framework built in panic became the foundation of post-war prosperity. The system we now take for granted was improvised in terror. While Depression-era America struggled economically, it became a cultural superpower almost by accident. Hollywood films spread American values, fashion, and language globally. Jazz, created by Black Americans who faced brutal discrimination at home, became America's cultural gift to the world. Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, and Billie Holiday were cultural ambassadors, whether the government recognized it or not. That soft power paid dividends. When World War II arrived, much of the world already admired American culture. Selling American leadership became easier because Hollywood had done the advance work for free. The 2008 crisis followed a similar pattern. Interconnected global collapse, bailouts, rise of populism. Some people got very rich buying distressed assets. Entertainment and cheap escapism thrived. Netflix and smartphones became our 10-cent movie tickets. COVID showed the same dynamics. Catastrophe hitting hardest those least able to absorb it, while tech billionaires added trillions to their wealth. The question is whether we're learning the right lessons or repeating the Depression in new packaging, because the pattern is clear enough to recognize. Collapse and opportunity coexist. Global economics is a spiderweb where touching one thread shakes the whole structure. The people at the bottom consistently show more resilience and innovation than those at the top. Any emergency systems built during crisis become the permanent architecture of whatever comes next. So what does that leave us with? The Great Depression was never just an American story. It was a global earthquake that toppled governments, enabled fascism, and rewrote the rules of capitalism worldwide. The distance between economic collapse and world war turned out to be shorter than anyone wanted to believe. A bank failure in Vienna, silk prices in Tokyo, coffee prices in Sao Paulo, each thread connected to the other through a financial system that was global before the word globalization existed. The profiteers had capital and timing. The forgotten architects had resilience and each other. Both shaped the future. Only one group made the textbooks. The next time someone tells you the Depression was about breadlines and FDR, remember, the real story is messier, more global, more opportunistic, and more human than any single narrative can hold. Because understanding how people survived, thrived, and built during history's worst economic disaster isn't just academic. It's a blueprint, one we might need again.